see how we can work together.
Thank you.
The next panel, maybe I'd invite the panel up. George, Marcia, Nate. One topic that's come up frequently in the past has been educational object repositories, and we've invited three folks who have a great deal of expertise in this arena to join us in a bit of a conversation this morning. George Laskaris is Executive Director of NJ EdgeNet. Marcia Mardis is Assistant Professor in Library and Information Science Program at Wayne State, and Nate McQueen is from my own institution with the Research Channel at the University of Washington. So, and Marcia's going to lead off the panel.
I guess I am going to lead off the panel. Well, first of all, good morning. Glad to be here today. I actually have just a couple slides to kick off the time. Get my all downloaded up here. So it's really nice to be here today because I have to tell you that when I was thinking about how to frame this panel and give time to my panelists who are at their own places with digital libraries, I had, or learning object repositories, I had kind of like a little, what I will call, flash future. So, let me get up to, all right, so, let's see, for our slide sorter. Oh, you couldn't see any of that. Fabulous. Great. So now that James has changed the source, right, or do we need to do the correct? So while we're doing this piece, I'll basically tell you what I was just going to say as we frame it, and that is, I had the good fortune in 1999 to be part of the National Science Digital Library's initial set of projects, and in those set of projects, we had this really interesting set of meetings at the very beginning where the National Science Foundation laid out what they were willing to invest into digital libraries, and then we had the wonderful task of defining exactly what that looked like. And surprisingly, there was a whole lot of interest in infrastructure, but not a whole lot of interest into who would be using the infrastructure. So in NSF's wonderful way of allowing 1,000 flowers to bloom, the National Science Digital Libraries has been going on for about 8 years now, and it's been evolving. And I think it's been a really interesting test bed and test case for growing a large-scale digital library project. And we have learned a number of things from that project. And so let me see if I can just get something. You know, I'm going to get this up here, and then it's going to be so absolutely anticlimactic. But, you know, that's cool. So, one of the things that all right, I'll just talk you through the slides. You've seen enough PowerPoint slides in your life. You know, what's the big viewer? So in the National Science Digital Library, I think what we figured out very quickly is when you're serving educators are negotiating a bunch of different decisions simultaneously when they're looking for educational resources. And of course, Internet 2 being at its heart an educational organization, it's going to be wrestling with these kinds of issues as it goes forth to further discussions about educational repositories as it is. And so the whole notion of what educational metadata or data about data looks like, or as a librarian, what essentially catalog records look like. But we're not allowed to say that anymore. What those kinds of descriptive structures look like really is very tricky, because what you may want to use it for may not be what somebody else wants to use it for, and this becomes particularly tricky when you're talking about anything that has to do with multimedia, anything that has to do with images. So if I see a picture that has a dog in a forest, I may be really looking at the nest that's up in the tree in the forest, or I may be really interested at what an excellent example of a Labrador retriever we're looking at, or I may be looking for a pastoral scene. So there are a whole bunch of different ways to capture that kind of context of use and pedagogical application. And very quickly also we found out, and this is why I feel it's a little back to the future, because now I'm starting to hear again discussions of the limitations of connectivity. Because what we see as commercial groups are moving more and more into schools, particularly in the area of video, that those clips, the ability to access those clips is wonderful, but only to the extent that the school's bandwidth load can handle it, and the teachers have the access to enough machines to be able to implement it effectively, and so it goes and so it goes. And these are the kinds of things that through the now almost 9 years that I've had with the National Science Digital Library, we've seen these issues again and again and again. They tend to be a little cyclical. And then also a couple, I think, of other projects that gave me some insight into this topic that I just wanted to set the scene with is the who's going to pay for it side of it. And sustainability has been really an ongoing issue. I would say that it is the one total hot potato of educational repositories, learning object repositories. Creating metadata is expensive. Finding good metadata is expensive. Maintaining these repositories is expensive. So I think it's really wonderful that more people are joining the discussion so that we can continue to get fresher and fresher ideas and don't have to worry about something like NSF to constantly be picking up the tab, but look for a sustainable way that has a lot of community buy-in. And also I think it tells us a lot about our users and who our users are, and actually there's this really interesting interplay between users and between technological infrastructure. And so for those people who want to build a repository without taking the user into account or consistently having user feedback play against the infrastructure, that's probably a route to getting a digital library like many out there, or a repository many out there that's not known very well and not used very widely. Because what you see with the projects that are successful, something like the Internet Public Library, is that they, and I worked at the Internet Public Library for a couple years as well. You know, I do this actually hundreds of times a week, but I don't know, maybe it's just this particular situation. It just doesn't seem like I don't. Excellent, thank you. All right. Let's get his name. See, I told you, it's a climactic. It really is going someplace. So in other words, is the more you know your users, the more you're able to focus your collection development, the more you're able to know how your educational object repository is making a difference. And I think that that's all that we really wanted to find through the course of these discussions and these kinds of meetings, is why do we go to all this trouble to create these repositories? What kinds of difference does it make? How does it improve teaching? How does it improve learning? How does it improve our role as educators? And so I just briefly there was going to say that, you know, that's one of the things that you learn even from something very simple as keeping track of all the things that are typed into your search box and characterizing your users that way. And so, but the piece that I think we're going to keep coming back to, and it's really exciting that we have two other perspectives here, is that we're going to be looking at the sustainability model and then also sustainability in terms of human sustainability at the ground level, because that's where implementation can be a disconnect. Because in K-12 atmospheres, you see school districts deciding to adopt a particular, and I keep returning to the particular commercial educational repository that I know, educational video repository that I know, but the way that the chain of command happens for the implementation of these things, it often leaves off the front level people who do the troubleshooting, who do making it go. So maybe some of those issues will surface here. And I do definitely see barriers kind of occurring in 4 different areas. So once we have the barriers of access, then become the barriers of skills. Are people comfortable implementing these objects? Are they comfortable finding these objects? And then also we have issues of policy. Are there sorts of policies, maybe perhaps acquisition policies, filtering policies, things like that, that might prevent the use of educational learning objects? And then 4, the most important piece that keeps surfacing is, with all of the other conflicting demands, some of them have it, some of them maybe high stakes testing in a K-12 atmosphere. How is it that we can use these educational learning object repositories to key that very essential motivation? Because for anybody who's ever had ed psych and you know Bloom's theory, expectancy X. If motivation is 0, everything else just falls apart. So I think that that's a good place to stop. And after all that rigmarole, we can get going. So I'll introduce our next panelist, who's got much nicer slides than I do.
It's all recycled.
So, Nate McQueen.
All right, let's see if I can make this going now. Yeah, I don't know. Should I hit the source button? I would hit the source. You know, that Mac PC compatibility.
No, now you're on video, James, so hit it again. The projector's on video, you gotta, there you go.
While Nate's doing this, I know Dan had something that he wanted to just touch on briefly.
Yeah, I did. I hate to interrupt here. There's a couple of us in the room, Pat, Bob, there's a few others at the conference who are already Twitter users. And if you know about Twitter communities and how we're bringing them together and doing that, we actually have a Twitter group, if you know what that is. We have a Twitter group that we're following at the account Internet2. And so it'll parrot out messages that you direct message to it. If you would like to join us, I think we've got almost 20 users in various places around the conference already today. We want to grow that within the Internet2 community. So if you're a Twitter user, follow the account Internet2. I'll follow you back. That gives us the ability to sort of broadcast messages out instantly among that group. The other thing that I wanted to draw your attention to is if you're on your web browser and you have a chance there somewhere, go to internet2.edu/tags, TAGS. And what that is the tagging guidelines. I've been working with Greg Wood and some of the other folks to come up with tagging guidelines for your blog posts and your pictures to help us find them and re-syndicate them to everyone at large. So for example, for this conference right now, anything that happens in this room should be tagged I2K20. For the conference in general here, we're tagging I2SMM, Spring Member Meeting 08, I2SMM 08. So the tagging guidelines are all on that internet2.edu/tags. If you're blogging, if you're posting pictures to Flickr, whatever you're doing, and then we've got a couple of aggregation points for that as well. So please keep those two things in mind. Web 2.0 meets Internet 2.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so I'm going to do something strange. I'm going to talk with my slides and then demo the application real quick. So to start off, my name is Nate McQueen. I'm from the Research Channel, and I'm a systems and software architect. And so I've been there about 8 years now. It's really interesting. About 8 years now, my bosses came up to me with the mandate that we need a digital asset management system to store all our video. You have 6 months, go. And so taking that broad outline, we ended up producing the first version of our digital asset management system, and now we're looking to kind of grow and expand from there. So, can I see a show of hands? Who's heard of the Research Channel? Great. I'll just skip these first few slides. And, to give you perspective, we started, in 1996, and we were up to about 3,200 hours of on-demand programming now. You can see that big jump. Well, you can see the big jump between 2005 and 2006. We took on all of Microsoft Research's content. So if you haven't been to the site in a while, Microsoft Research, we added 1,000 of their lectures and guest speakers. Our participants, Duke University, Rice, Penn State, some of the top institutional organizations. Our technical partners, we've been working with Intel a lot lately. We're members of the Internet 2. We come to these events and present often. Distribution, right now we're in about 26 million homes via satellite and cable. And so our past and present, our digital asset management system is a system called Digital Well. And it's a system that focuses on content ingestion, storage, and delivery of assets via the web. It uses people, processes, and standards-based technology to deliver these goals. Some of our current metrics, we have about 58,000 digital objects in the system, taking up 14 terabyte of data on the spinning disk. The interesting thing is we have over 400 terabytes of backup of data on our storage tech tape silos. And what that is we also do work for a radio station called KXP. KXP is a non-profit radio station that was funded by Paul Allen with the mandate of advancing music to the public at no cost. And so we have in CD quality format every second that's been broadcast since the year 2001. And we're just waiting for the day that the DMCA goes away and we can make all that wonderful music available to everybody. So building up our past with our digital asset management system, we were kind of looking towards the future and saying, what's the next big thing in technology, in video, in community, really? And we came up with ResearchOne. ResearchOne is an online community that allows researchers and academics to share their work and interact with their peers in the public. This is a look here at the beginning portal. And so you can kind of see that it's based around the concept of a project. So here we have the Neptune project, which is a underwater cabling observatory that's being built right now. It just got funded for, I believe, about $207 million to lay cable on the ocean floor and take high-definition video and photos and return them to the terrestrial stations for encoding. So when this gets fully realized in about 2010, they're going to be shipping us video from the ocean floor at 1.5 gigabits a second. And we're going to be trying to, hopefully by that time, we'll have a system in place that can handle that amount of data because I'm sure, as you know, a spinning disk is still getting cheaper and cheaper, but it's not that cheap yet. I mean, we're talking about petabyte scale infrastructure that's going to be necessary for this challenge. But this project was created more or less to give those people who are funded by the NSF and really almost anyone in space where they can have almost like a brochure for their project. So here you can see metadata about the project, the PIs involved. The right is the featured media. And then you also have blogs and forums. So every researcher who signs up gets his own project space. He has a media gallery that you can upload assets to and has forums where they can communicate with the public. And so my vision for the K20 space is this type of paradigm can be applied to almost anything. I mean, you can imagine this type of software infrastructure powering, say, a high school student science project. So they want to put their project online. They'll have a space where it'll be backed up, maintained, and so they can kind of share this content and grow it from there. And so one of the interesting things we did was we built kind of a YouTube-like encoding system where you can upload video and it will automatically be transcoded into Flash. We think that Flash as a distribution medium is more or less the future. Its adoption rate is nearly universal. There's not as much infrastructure to maintain. You can make low bandwidth proxies, which is really important. So you could upload source MPEG-2 to the system, and it will transcode it down into something that's manageable and watchable over a low bandwidth network. And we think that's really important to dissemination to make sure that if this does end up in a classroom setting, people will be able to use it. And so another word of encouragement is that this is built off of a series of platforms. There's a community server powering the blogs and forums, and then there's our own asset management system, which we grafted into it. Deploying this technology or creating this technology from scratch, say about 5 years ago, would have required a team of 10 to 15 developers and millions in funding. We put this together as a proof of concept with 2 developers in 6 months. So the barrier and threshold to deploying these types of technologies is getting lower and lower to the fact where most of the time, communities like the movable type community that people who publish WordPress, that type of technology is free and it's available, and it just needs more or less somewhere to live and then someone who's familiar with the technology. But I think that it's getting closer and closer where you're going to see a point where there's going to be a convergence, and this type of technology will be widely available in the classroom. So that's kind of how I wanted to kick off our part of the talk. Oh, I'm sorry, real quick. And if you'd like to go visit it, it's at demo.researchone.org. And if you break it, send me an email, let me know. So we have some demos, more demos coming up. So.
Well, good morning. In New Jersey, we're very fortunate to receive a 3-year grant from the Institute for Museum and Library Studies to develop and deploy a statewide academic video-on-demand repository. The digital video repository is Fedora Commons based, so it's open source and will be housed in the core of the state education network and will provide essentially 3 categories of content. On-demand, licensed commercial videos from companies like Films Media Group, which is one of the largest providers of academic video in today's academic libraries, as well as locally owned videos. The repository, what's really key to this repository is that it has a workflow management system that's very easy to use, and is a web-based tool that facilitates assigning metadata to sections of the video that permits the collections to be searched for specific types of content. The suite of tools, that are being created, not fully created yet, make it very easy for educators to construct playlists from multiple videos to illustrate a concept and to store it as a separate learning object that can be searchable by educators. And to kind of give you an example of how that can work from, let's say, a faculty member's point of view, we can take a filmed lecture and assign a time-based structure map on top of that lecture and insert materials from other videos. It might be 30 seconds from one video, 15 seconds from another video to really capture the essence of the concept and really store it as part of the lecture. And the lecture essentially can become applicable and searchable for very specific content. That same structure map can actually be used by students as a means of taking notes through the lecture. They can go back, view the lecture, and insert some of their own material and store that as a learning object or a shared resource with other students. So it's really very flexible and easy to use. And that's, I think, one of the strengths of the project. Those separately stored learning objects can also be easily integrated with course management systems like Moodle, WebCT, or Sakai. A Video Commons collection will be publicly available that will house material like history, lectures from notables, as well as video documenting research and scientific advances. NJVid is essentially notable for providing a statewide video strategy that can accommodate any kind of an organization, higher education, K-12, public libraries, as well as museums and archives. What's of particular interest to me is that a substantial part of the project provides the resources to develop a statewide shibboleth-based identity management infrastructure that will support network authentication and authorization for a wide variety of content resources. Significant effort is also being expended to develop an extensible approach that can be used by other statewide consortium video initiatives, and it's all built on open source tools. We're currently 7 months into the project, and I'll just note that there are several other NJVid presentations this week to provide much more detailed information. I encourage you to attend. Certainly take any questions.
Well, I think we have about 10 minutes for questions, if there are any questions about the material you've heard here today. Yes?
I've got a question for George. I'm sorry I stepped out if you said this. We saw the presentation at State at George's office, and it's archaic. There's a lot of exciting. Anyways, WISNET still wants in. Is there an obvious in yet, or is it still just pay attention? That was my takeaway. I think there was some ins we could get in, but coming from there's only so much resource that we can bring to the table. We want to participate, but we also want to get the heck out of the way. You know, the elephants are doing.
Well, we're basically getting to the point where you hire all the staff and getting some things off the ground, but we've also had a request from Penn State to mirror the project. That might be an opportunity for WISNET as well. Here, that as we develop components and put them in production, we want people to test them and try to break them into feedback. So willing to participate at that kind of a level. I will say that this is a $1 million grant that was preceded by a previous $1 million grant from IMLS, something called the New Jersey Digital Hybrid. And this project is really extending that project. So a lot of the metadata creation pieces have already been developed. And what this project is doing is extending them in those ways. And so both students and faculty can actually use them, providing a web-based front end for those tools. So if there's interest, you can call.
For Nate and George, how are you handling accessibility issues with the video portion, captioning, that type of thing, so that it's available to all?
Well, that's a good question. You know, as part of the research channel, we've been mandated to, any incoming video is now required from some of our institutional partners to be closed captioned. Right, as of now, it is very expensive and time-consuming to close caption material in a non-automated fashion. Sending out to have the video transcribed and have that transcription matched up. We're looking into automated systems that will provide that type of service, but as of yet, we've identified no low-cost, easy way to implement that type of system. But accessibility is a big concern for us because, you know, we're trying to reach as broad an audience as possible with the research channel. So you know, we're deeply concerned about it and looking for ways to make that happen. If anyone has experience closed captioning and would like to share that with us, we would certainly like to talk to you.
One of the things we've done in New Jersey was we had recently upgraded the state education network to a regional optical infrastructure, and we're able to provide much higher speed links. So sort of another question I think you had about accessibility was how to get to access this video on demand from, let's say, K-12 school that may not have a lot of connectivity. So we've been systematically upgrading a lot of those links to provide a much faster infrastructure so that we can get the material out. But this project also provides the ability to do a lot of transcoding of video so that we can send it in all the way down to a dial-up connection that will slow it down to progressive flash, or we can make it available in a wide variety of formats that can match the connectivity of the internet.
The issue of sustainability for your projects, we're from a K-12 district, and right now the commercial vendors essentially are wanting to put a video server in their wide area networks infrastructure, bypass the internet connectivity requirement altogether, and then they charge you for annually content that they can get from various resources. We would consider that for competition. What would be the advantage of participating in this and taking our money that we were spending over there and spending it on this type of research?
Well, that's an interesting question. For one thing, I would say if you were going to deploy a system like that, if you work with open source tools and build the server yourself, then you can control the development going forward. It's hard once you have all your content locked into a black box to get it to move into other systems pretty easily. So I would say the advantage would be utilizing open source tools for just that reason. Using open source tools gives you a certain measure of sustainability out of the box because there's a community developing that technology going forward and take advantage of it, as opposed to being locked into a vendor solution.
Well, I will tell you the one thing that has just enamored teachers, I mean, they like the video and the concept, is the ability to look at a video segment from one source or one provider and take just a very small segment of that, maybe a volcano or something, and then cut to another video from another source and say, okay, let's have a weather satellite scene, and then cut to another one where they see a tornado, where they're only playing 5 or 6 seconds or maybe 20 seconds out of these, 40-minute videos, and then put them in a playlist like you would MP3 songs, and then say, okay, that's my curriculum. That type of capability, is that being built?
We're working on that as a proof of concept. From our earlier version of Digital Well, we worked with a few public television stations to produce like a rough cut workbench. And so these public television stations would ship us their content. We'd automatically generate keyframes, and a user could select a series of keyframes and splice video together on the fly and build playlists. We're looking at transitioning that technology into ResearchOne for people for just that reason, people who want to take all of their assets and combine them into little short segments and playlists. So that's actually one of our next features we're
That's really a tool that's at the essence of the engineering project, is that building into playlists and storing these separate learning objects, metadata tagging them so that they can be searched by K20 educators with the libraries. That's a key component of both the metadata tagging as well as the construction of playlists. The challenge we have is that much of the video content is licensed, that we have to have statewide licensing for that. That's why the identity management is really key for being able to do that, because if there's a student who's trying to access this course management system to get the playlist, we've got to be able to do role-based authorization to validate that they're actually a student from one of the institutions that's licensed. If they're not licensed, they won't get to receive it. So that's a significant part of this project. And to be able to do that on a statewide basis with K-12 as well as higher ed, it's a little easier in the higher ed sphere. K-12 is more of a challenge.
I would like to point out one motivating factor, because I remember one of the slides, and I believe with yours, just that little bit of thing about motivated or it stops. That specific feature, when you get a teacher in a classroom to do that, the other teachers in the hallway will line up to learn how to do just that. I mean, it really deals with the human element of that, and how easy it is to implement that, how to actually use, seems to center around the playlist. We have video segments out there where you play the whole segment. We put that editing feature out there, and that just really plays it. So it is
The
a very
reusability of that object is really very key in the search for other educators. Reintegrated with the material.
I think another thing that we're seeing with the K-12 users that I work with, I work very closely with the organization right now who has gotten into what's become a fraught relationship with a commercial provider who has them locked into just what their content is. And often they do go and expand their content from other locations, but the issue is that they're having problem getting their own local content back into the database, and that's really an issue because when you talk to a lot of educators, they want something, even if it's a series of objects that have been connected together in various ways, that they know meets their local curriculum, meets their other particular community peculiarities, and have the ability to both share things as well as take things. And we're seeing this real evolution from the notion of information literacy, of being able to use different types of media to learn, to actually being able to create that media from various points as a student and contribute it back and share it out. So I think that that might be another area where a more open source, commercial, locally grown approach could have a significant advantage.
Actually, having never experienced that, we didn't know we were missing it, but I can see that would be tremendous. I might point out one of your easy ends might be the sports football coach going back and look at plays and stuff like that. It might be just as easy as the curriculum stuff.
There you get into licensing again with the sports association.
There's a question you
Well, I just wanted to follow up on that. I mean, what we want is not to have a bunch of passive kids absorbing commercial content. We want them to be creating content, to be learning what meta tagging is. And I agree with you completely that it's all about sort of the Web 2.0 aspect of being content creators. And I just hope we don't let what has happened in higher ed, particularly in like scientific journals and papers and so on, happen to what content K-12 creates, so that we end up buying back that content at some ridiculous markup. I mean, we've got E-rate to sort of sustain our connectivity, and hopefully that will continue. We have no similar funding for creative content at school, but it becomes part of the natural curriculum. It just becomes part of what schools do and what kids should be doing in school.
I agree, and in fact, that's the exact approach ResearchOne is taking, is that it's engaging the researchers to share their work with the public. And you can imagine kids in a classroom, blogging, using forums, participating interactively with their experience of learning. And that's one thing. If they produce their content, they can store it in locally in the system, they own it, they control it, they can play with it however they want. That's really our focus and where we're trying to head. I agree.
And I think we see actually two parallel streams happening here. We've got the first stream where those kids who are able to get access to clips, to download them, to piece part them, integrate them with other things they're doing, are the kids who are able to more effectively transform information into knowledge. And it's tested in a number of different ways, and it's been observed in a number of different ways. So I think that that's something that has to be like requirement one. And the flip side of it, if that's not happening in school, if that step in that model isn't coming from school, that's something that kids will find a way to do on their own. And we see that in kids who are applying for college, not realizing that their MySpace account is accessible to anybody, and their potential, college admissions person sees them, doing beer bongs in their friend's basement. So, this whole notion of reclaiming that kind of creativity and guiding it in a more positive way, I think is something that we have a tremendous opportunity to do that. Did you really get to end beer bong?
Hey, Nate.
It's a perfect note to end on.
Nate, how long will it be before we can move the videos that we're currently posting up to, say, Google Video, and then we embed in the wiki here for this group? Can we put them up on ResearchOne?
That's a good question. Right now, we're looking at funding options. We're talking to people like the NSF, maybe the IMLS, and other people about doing this. We did this as a proof of concept, and we're looking for infrastructure. But you could take a clip like 100 megabyte AVI and upload it right now, and it will turn into a, you can specify the resolution and upload it to ResearchOne just as it stands now.
Well, it won't let me because I just tried to sign up and it tells me I've got to wait for the beta test. But very specifically, we're doing that now with Google Video, and then we embed in the wiki. So the agenda for today, all the videos, your slides, those things will all be embedded. But what I'm wondering is how long till this community can do that?
As soon as we get the funding funding for the infrastructure. Literally right now, this is sitting on one server in an environment. We need infrastructure, bandwidth. More importantly, we need a community manager, because once we open this up to the general public, it's going to become a human resource problem of managing all these people and hand-holding and helping them. But we're just waiting. We want to get this out there as soon as possible. So.
Would you join me in thanking this great panel?